Hi guys,
Good to see ya.
Dr. Nathan here, Dr. Rebecca Warren. So we just finished up a webinar for our Wellness Academy, and we were talking about kids' health. Well, we were talking about thyroid and kids, and shared a lot of deep information there in our Wellness Academy. Our Wellness Academy signups are closed; they don't open up again until September. But we wanted to jump on here just because we were talking about kids' health, and we wanted to share a little bit about our own kids' health and how to raise healthy kids in an unhealthy world. So I'm just gonna wait. I know a few people usually get on. If you want to tell them where to find us online, so I can share this.
I was gonna say, I think this is so massively important from the standpoint of, just recognizing really how serious it is. When we say raising our healthy kids in an unhealthy world, guys, I mean, the stats are absolutely staggering when we're talking about our health, and we're gonna kind of dive into that. But, as people are joining, make sure, if you haven't yet, make sure you like and follow us on Doctors Warren here, because we're always posting, different, not only articles and things like that, but really our lives are some of our favorite things to do on the planet, because we get a chance to just like sit and talk and educate. And, right now we get to dive into one of my favorite, all-time subjects, which is, our kids. And so, again, let's kind of talk about that for just a second. Really, when we're looking at chronic disease, guys, we're in an era where we have literally traded infectious disease for chronic disease in our children. We know that, again, it used to be back in 1950, about 4%, literally 4% of our population had an autoimmune condition. Now, 46% of our kids under the age of 18 have an autoimmune condition. Like, that's staggering alone. And so we have to recognize that, again, the environment that we've created is not conducive at all to raising these healthy kids. And so we really need to address this if we want to change the outcome of what it looks like right now, right? And I believe that we can, but it all starts by number one, being educated on it, and then, as well, like kind of empowerment and showing how well you guys can do it, and then really just putting that into action and going from there. So that being said, it starts from the beginning, right?
And so even something that we kind of talked about and we kind of noticed as well, when we were doing our webinar, our Q&A webinar with our Academy members, is that, a lot of research is talking about a lot of our, I just had a brain fart. I was reading it, said, but I know anything. I don't know what that means. Well, a lot of the what research says about the way that chronic disease is happening here in America is that it can be developing within your body depending on the disease from 7 to 10 years before you're able to even test it. So think about this. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer when I was 19 years old. So research says that started when I was 9 or 10 years old. Another thing that we see is, with Hashimoto's, it can be 8 years within the body. So I have young women in my office, 17, 19, 20 years old, that I'm coaching on balancing their hormones. And so they have Hashimoto's. So 8 years before, they were 11. And so these chronic issues are showing. You didn't mean to send that. No worries. Anyways, but all of those things are showing up younger, and we're not, finding it. So, the reason why we wanted to do this too is a conversation that I had this past week with a couple here in our office, and I said that, for us, our kids don't eat unhealthy. They might have. We did. There was that one time we went to Papa Boudreaux's and Elijah had a piece of bread. But that doesn't ever happen, okay? Not on purpose. And the reason why is, as parents, we don't feel guilty. We don't feel bad. We don't feel like we're missing out these treats for our kids. And the reason why is because, first of all, yes, what we do for a living, but also because we know what it's like to lose your health. And I know what it's like to get the diagnosis of a cancer and getting it cut out and getting radiation and suffering with hormone issues. And every day I sit in rooms with men and women, and you sit with children and families where we're talking with them for an hour about how the health was lost. And so for us, what we want to do is we want to create healthy, a healthy relationship with food for our kids. We want that when they go into high school and college, they're not going wild. We obviously want to give them the right nutrients as they're growing. But you know what? I'm not going to lose it if my kid one day in high school ate McDonald's, I'll be like, gross, why didn't you do Chick-fil-A? But
well, I mean, I think it comes back to this too, you know, where it's like, hey, listen, eventually as our kids grow up, as they get older, it's more about the explanation as to why you are doing certain things. So instead of just telling your kids to do these healthy things, you explain why you do them, right? Because if you're trying to get your kids to live a healthy lifestyle, but you're not, right? I'm telling you, they will see through the incongruency. There's no doubt. But if we can teach our kids, there's a difference. So, like, for example, you know, let's say I'm not feeling well and I'm going to take, you know, some immune boosting supplements or something, you know, and Elijah's around me. I'll say, hey, buddy, you know, I'm about to take, you know, this vitamin C, because when I take this, it allows my immune system to work at a higher level. It supports what my amazing intelligence inside my body is already doing. That's why I take this, so that, again, my body can work at an optimal level. And guess what? He's like, whoa, that's cool. I want to take vitamin C, you know? And again, it's not from the standpoint of, I'm like, Elijah, you need to take vitamin C. It's like, hey, I'm going to teach you the reason why. And guess what? If one day he's like, nah, I don't want to do it, guess what I say? Okay. All right, man. That's okay, because, again, we're trying to teach these kids a healthy lifestyle, not a healthy day. Does that make sense?
And that also, I always have to kind of sort of call out parents in our clinic, because I have to say that means you have to eat well. Because what do we tend to do, especially as moms? We put ourselves last. We go, we take care of our kids, we take care of the spouse, we're taking care of everything, and we're not taking care of ourselves. Our children are going to, you know, mimic what we do. And as parents, our health, like, what good is it if we're not there to see our kids grow? If when they have grandchildren, our children are too busy taking care of us. And so, you know, one thing we do that, I'm going to be completely honest, when I first started reading articles about it, I was like, oh, this is going to make my life even harder. But I went and bought a learning tower, a black learning tower. We put it together. And let me go ahead and tell you, we live in the coolest little place downtown, and that learning tower takes up so much stinking space.
Yeah,
I hate it.
None.
But we bought this learning tower because we needed Elijah and Rosie to sit up there, and it can be for one kid. We got it on Amazon, but there's a lot of different places you can get it. And we put them in there, and we had them make dinner with us. So there was one night where I did give the kids butter knives, and I kind of showed that, even Rosie, and granted Rosie just went like this the whole time, but I gave them each thing for them to cut or to take apart, had them put it all together, had them toss the salad, and at the end, they ate it. You know, Dr. Zach Bush talks about how, you know, show me a kid that doesn't eat vegetables, and I'll show you a kid that's not grown vegetables. And let me go ahead and tell you, for years I said I had a black thumb, that I couldn't keep anything alive. And even in the city, thank you to Crabtree Farms and Bees on a Bicycle, they were so helpful. I got my plants from Crabtree Farms, and the people at Bees on a Bicycle in Southside just gave me a lot of guidance, and we grew all types of lettuce and kale and tomatoes and sorrel and a bunch of stuff. I didn't even know what I was growing.
Got a goji plant going right now. It's kind of cool.
It's blossoming.
Yeah, it's doing well.
But it was really cool because Elijah and Rosie were so excited to pick their own lettuce and pick their own tomatoes. So we make sure to involve the kids in dinner. I do let them scramble the eggs and cook the eggs. And what I found is, when I started doing this, it was during a time where Elijah was kind of on a hunger strike. And it was so cool that he saw that he cracked his egg, he scrambled his egg, and he put it on the stove. He was so ready to eat it. So doing things with your kids is going to allow them to really be proud of what they're producing and what they're growing and what they're making in the kitchen. And yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and I don't like to cook, but it's worth it when at the end of making the meal, I don't have to fight Elijah, which I usually don't. I usually say, okay, you know. Just eat when you're ready. Did you want to read that comment?
Yeah, well, Miranda, you know, this is really amazing. I love what you said. She said that her 3-year-old, like a sailor, had asked at a parade if you wanted some candy, and your 3-year-old was like, no, it's all right, I already have some, because you had already talked to him about it beforehand. And what I liked is you did what we said, like, you explained it to him, right? You said, you know, I want to give you this because this other candy might make you feel icky. And that's really the way to do it. Like, you're explaining to them why, the reason why behind it. Think about you guys, you know, in adulthood. most people don't ask why, but in reality, that's really what we want to know. We want to know the why behind things. Your kids are no different. If you teach them the why, again, they're going to understand it, and they're gonna actually make those best choices. So way to go, Miranda.
I will say
awesome.
that's something we do
Good
as well.
moment.
Whenever we know we're going to a parade or we went to Pigeon Forge, I'm going to stock up on the stevia gummies, the Smart Sweets, or I'm going to have like the dark chocolate with stevia, so that when we are in situations, and so Elijah, we do, depending, sometimes I don't even have to use it, but I like having it there, because if it's overwhelming and there's a lot of lights and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of candy, be like, all right, so now Elijah already knows, and Rosie follows him, that he'll pick up the candy. He loves picking it up. Like at a parade, he's like picking it all up, and he'll show it to me, and he's like, look what I got. And he'll just like go throw it in the trash, and then he'll come get his treats or his candy and stuff like that. So
we do the Switch Witch at
we did the Switch
Halloween,
Witch at Halloween, and he was so willing to give us all of his candy for a toy. And another thing we do with our kids, and I think a lot of this, with a lot of the women that I coach, there's a lot of unhealthy relationship with food. Whether growing up you were made to eat food. I know, people that were made to eat fish, and that they still can't even eat fish to this day. One thing that's really, hard to do, but we've even challenged ourselves, is not using sweets as a kind of end goal. Like, eat your vegetables and then you can have this. But the one thing we do so that our children can have a good relationship with food is, number one, we make sure that in our home there isn't things that they can't eat. That anything I buy, I want to eat, but also it's going to be nourishing and it's good for them, and even the treats that are good for them. And really, we do give our kids reign to go into the kitchen, which is great on some mornings when Elijah's been up all night. The other day, I brought them downstairs, and we hadn't made breakfast yet. We had just gone down. We went to the living room, and Elijah looked at Rosie and he goes, hey, come on, Rosie, let's go get something to eat. And they opened the fridge, and I had bought them this paleo banana bread. They got the macadamia nut milk out, and they got the banana bread out, and I'm just like sitting on the couch like,
what's going on?
So they did it themselves. Granted, they just like eat it straight out. So I let them eat that, and then I had them come into the kitchen and make eggs with me. So we are trying to teach Elijah to really understand what his body is saying. And we read in the newest edition of Paleo magazine, there's a scientist that's gotten all these awards, and he wrote a book. You asked me what it was called. I don't remember. But
is it like The Naturalist or something? I don't know.
Something, yeah. It was a really cool name. But in the book, he talked about how he spent all these decades studying animals and their eating habits. And what he found is that in animals' palate, the things that they look for each meal, not just each day or each season, but each meal their palate draws them to different things that is an answer to what their body is needing. Wow. So an example is in their microbiome, if they need some more...
What an intelligence, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So if they need a certain weed, if they need a certain herb, and so the one thing his book talks about is how animals do this. They have a palate, and when they listen to their palate, they can answer what their body is needing. And that humans have that same palate, but we've lost that connection because our palates have been overwhelmed by processed foods and fast foods, and even restaurants have a lot of sugar in foods and a lot of bad fats. But he said that as humans, we can reconnect with our palate. And so it was great to read that, because that's something that we're trying to teach our kids even now, is to listen to your body. And a lot of times Elijah ends up eating a lot of fat. Or what was really cool is naturally we let the kids go into the fridge, or even when we go shopping, we let them go grab some things. And in spring into summer, they really were eating a ton of fruit. Yeah. And now they're kind of slowly coming out of that, and they're back to eating a lot of fat. They're gravitating towards what their palates need. That's and so when we define to our kids what meals should always look like and at what time they should eat, they're not learning to listen to their own bodies. And sometimes, and this is on you, and sometimes, yes, Elijah does go into the fridge and grab a whole stick of grass-fed butter and snacks on that.
Oh, it's better than, well, I will call out my own. I'll tell you right now, one of my biggest parenting mistakes, all right? We'll call it a learning moment. How about that? Learning moments in parenting is I taught Elijah at the beginning of, I don't know, when he was, 1 or something, the word snack. And man, I wish I could take that back so much now, because, again, like, he uses that word for everything. He's like, Dad, I want a snack. I'm like, how about we eat some good food? And he's like, no, I want a snack. And like, it's already kind of entrained in him. So we're trying to untrain that. And it's like, that was me completely. I taught him, actually, Dr. Goldberg, our like world-renowned nutritionist from getting our doctorate. He'd be so disappointed in me for teaching the word snack. Yeah, I know. But that being said, I just, how amazing is it that the intelligence of the body can literally tell you what it needs when it needs it. And like the two things that I was thinking about when you were talking about that is, how often do our kids get different tastes, like bitter and sour, right? Unless it's in candy. But besides that, those are two things that they're not even getting on a regular basis, because their palates are consistently getting lots of sugar and lots of salt, which is usually in the form of like, table salt. So, we're not even training that appropriately, but just think how amazing that is.
Yeah. And so one thing we say is that when, if your kids have been exposed to, the bad foods or like a lot more processed foods, we always say that, first of all, a child's mind is so malleable, even as they're getting into like 10 years old or 11 years old. And the truth is, sometimes us as, modern day Americans, we don't like discomfort. We don't like pain. And sometimes we go through it in life, and we have to learn and trust on God and know that it has a purpose, and we're growing and we're developing and we're changing. And the same goes for our children. A lot of kids that are experiencing fevers and their bodies are fighting things, their body is changing, their immune system is becoming stronger. I say that because for some parents, it's hard for them to just go ahead and switch. They're like, oh, they're not going to eat anything. Or, we do work with a lot of kids that are on the spectrum disorder, or this is all they eat, they're going to lash out. We always say give it about 2 weeks. Just be consistent and stick to it. Their minds will change, their palates will change, and then they're going to be open to it. And just being consistent is just a major thing in doing that. And let me go ahead and say this. The purpose innately of the human body, of our body, without you having to think about it, every single day your body wants to survive. Even the smallest organism, even candida or parasites in our bodies that are the smallest thing in the world, those little things are so intelligent that they want to survive. Imagine your own body. Your body wants to survive even more. I say that because unless there's something neurologically wrong with your child is not going to starve to death. Okay?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Just listen. I mean, and then you think about when kids get sick,
they naturally start to fast, right? Yeah, because their body says, I want to use all that energy instead of digesting, for actually boosting my immune system, right? They're reverting energy. It's like, I mean, even the own dogs, they do the same thing, right? When they're sick, they're like, I'm not even going to touch food. Why? They're reverting their energy from digestion to immune system and their immune function. Kids are no different, and so it's not like what, maybe your mom or grandmother used to say about like, oh, we got to give you the food to actually give you the energy to fight something. No, not necessarily. Like, and I'm not saying don't give it to them if they ask for it, right? But like if they're naturally, kind of fasting, you're making sure that they're drinking plenty of water. They're getting, plenty of, you can put some lemon juice in there to get some electrolytes, those type of things. Again, they're going to be doing great. You have to remember, we have to reconnect this amazing intelligence inside of our kids' bodies. We have to kind of reconnect that process, because from the beginning of life, our kids are introduced to basically an artificial way of life, right? From birth, unfortunately, most of them are happening in a hospital setting, artificial light. Their first interaction with a human being is literally gloves. Like, can you imagine that? Like, they're literally gloves as they're coming out of mom's womb, and then it's into immediately, introduced to artificial, medications or artificial,
stress,
artificial stress. And then you've got things like, hopefully not, but sometimes, kids aren't even around their own mothers right at the beginning of birth. Then you throw on top of it, now, they're introduced to all of this fake food that's going around that's not real food. They're not getting outside because we're spending most of our lives inside. And you can start to see we live this artificial lifestyle. So guess what? what's the only way to take care of, manage an artificial lifestyle is artificial care, like medication and surgery. And so if we want our kids to be different, if we want them to actually be able to express health appropriately, again, we have to get out of this artificial mindset and get them as close to their natural as we possibly can. And that includes, dealing with nutrition, but also includes, getting them outside, letting them play, letting them be a kid, letting them imagine.
Eat dirt.
Lick
the floor.
unless it's like a genetically modified
like Rosie,
farm, don't let them eat the dirt.
Yeah,
right?
or like Rosie, I'll never forget, my family came down, and I don't know, what was it for, when we were on the shuttle? So we rode the shuttle from South. You just remembered. I was like, you don't remember.
Yeah.
So we're riding on the shuttle from Southside to like where Warehouse Row is, and Rosie's on my brother's lap, and he didn't even do anything, and Rosie like leans over and like licks the pole that everyone holds on to, just like a full like bottom to top, and I'm looking at my brother like, what are you doing? And he's like,
sorry.
I don't know.
I'm like, listen, I'm all about my kids getting all kinds of good microbes, but I don't know how good those microbes might have been. But
disgusting.
Yeah, right. I think that falls under the category of artificial.
I feel
right?
gross even thinking about that.
But we do, man. We have to reconnect them to as close to the natural as we possibly can. And I'm telling you, it makes a massive difference. I actually went over a study with the team before our shift today, and I actually showed them a study that was out of Japan where they took participants, and what they did is they did pre and post both blood work and urine analysis, checking immune function of people that actually went out into nature for 3 days and 2 nights. They checked, and basically what they want to see is their natural killer cell activity. Here's what they saw. Not only in the right after they got back home, that first analysis, did they see an uptick in natural killer cells, but they saw it even 30 days after going out into nature. They saw a massive increase in natural killer cell activity. And so all that being said is, again, there is this amazing connection to nature that we're losing, and we're losing it very quickly because literally we're living this artificial lifestyle. But think how amazing that is, right? Natural killer cells are literally one of your major defenses against things like cancer, against infection. And so just by boosting that, just by being outside, right?
So even for us, I posted a picture on my Instagram, and someone's like, does that really help with their gut microbiome? So we live in the city, and we go to Bees on a Bicycle, and because she just takes so much pride in the products that she has there.
No pesticides, no
pesticides or herbicides. So we get our soil there.
Yeah.
And so we'll plant with the kids, but we literally have half a bag because we do live in the city. But a lot of you guys have yards that have been sprayed with stuff, or the soil has been depleted. So it's even a good idea for you guys to go get some good nutrient-rich soil that's free of chemicals. And one thing she told me is a lot of potting soil, even if it's organic, has yes, we're so perfectly knit, absolutely. But a lot of potting soil, she just told me, and we're going to have her on our radio show, we'll have construction byproducts, kind of like leftover construction debris that is kind of used to mix up the soil. So making sure you have really good soil. And we have half a bag that they go to town with. And yes, we have
That'd be a good Facebook Live to go over all of the stuff that we've used to plant.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to have her do a Facebook Live.
Because she brought home last time the
wild
thing. It was like, what was it, like ionic trace minerals with infused with what was it, like kelp and
I don't know, it looked like mud
some type
water.
Of fish or something.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be like minerals for the soil. And it blew my mind because it just reminded me that and it doesn't always have to be from like an aquatic source, but it's just a reminder that, again, everything in nature is connected. That means animals are directly connected to the way that our soil is, directly connected to the way that we grow our vegetables, directly connected to our microbiome and the makeup of our immune system and the health of our kids overall, right? It's just really getting connected to the natural.
Well, one thing I think we can kind of transition into, because you said a lot of things about this artificial world, and I got asked one time, is chiropractic natural? And I remember thinking, like, what? Like, is it natural? We're alternative health, and we have the clinic side.
Right,
yeah, of course it's natural, but chiropractic is not natural.
It's not.
Chiropractic was born out of us living in a world that's not natural. And the more unnatural that our world becomes, the more these interventions that, there's probably not, actually, I bet you tribes do have some chiropractors. They just don't have a license, but they probably just do stuff on them. But, it's developed and it's become such a staple in a world that's just not natural. And so we wanted to share our birth story. And they both, especially Rosie's, involves chiropractic a lot. And so, when I was pregnant, I am a doctor of chiropractic, so I know how amazing chiropractic is, and I see people get well, and it's amazing. But man, when I was pregnant, you thought I was joking, but I was like, this is the best thing ever. Every time I got adjusted, because it just
I'm like, haven't you've been adjusted for like the last 11 years, and now you're just like raving about how amazing it is. Yeah.
And I was nursing. It was I was just all sorts of out of whack and just hurting and stuff. And, with Elijah's birth, that was a long birth. I had a really great birth experience, but I think I pushed 2-3 hours. I don't know. I was in my birthing high. It was at home. I had been adjusted all through pregnancy. I had been working out. I ate really well, except for those random cravings. And but one thing was that there's a lot of things in my past history that was really still present because I didn't address it with Elijah. And so one thing I had was fibroids. And that's from like a lot of estrogen dominance. And it happened a lot when I went hypo and even after I had surgery, but we didn't find it until I got pregnant. So a lot of women will have fibroids and not know it. A lot of women have rotated pelvis and not know it. And all the doctors tell them is that you're too small or your baby's too big. If you're too small, again, we're going back to the fact that our body wants to survive. It's not going to do things to harm itself. No animal is going to do something out in nature to harm itself. In science, if an animal is harming itself, we take a step back and say something is disconnected here. So a lot of times women are told it's, their pelvis is too small, the baby's too big. A lot of times it's because there's some type of obstruction there. And so for me, I had fibroids. And so Elijah, we took a while for him to come out. And when he came out that first week, I struggled with nursing, which isn't nursing supposed to be super easy? We were all made to nurse. Shouldn't you latch on and shouldn't we have this great relationship? And that's why it's so important to have amazing postpartum resources for mom, not just for baby, for moms. This gets me worked up. I know, Kaylee, because you're a doula. Guys, if you need a doula, both during pregnancy and after, you got to talk to Kaylee, all right? And I follow all of your stuff. So I struggled, and I was so thankful. I actually talked to my sister-in-law over the phone, and she was showing me different holds and all these things. And we had the ability to have someone come to our home, and I think it's just worth it. If you wanna gift a postpartum mom, something, give her some postpartum doula, especially the first time. No, every time.
But I meant like especially all the time is great. So
give them some time with the postpartum. You can jump in on the chiropractic side. All you do is coach me. Actually, no, I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. But give them some postpartum, support so that they can be supported, not just baby. But with Elijah, I was in a lot of pain. And he would only nurse on one side. And I thought maybe he was nursing on the other side. But I was in a lot of pain, and I didn't really realize that was abnormal. I thought, you always hear that you're supposed to nurse in 2 years is going to be painful. 2 weeks, it'll be painful. But my toes were curling. And this is why I think for a woman to be successful nursing, there has to be different levels of support. I've heard women say, a lactation consultant came and she said everything was fine. Well, maybe you need to go see a chiropractor, a craniosacral therapist. Maybe you need to look at latches, tongue ties. There's different things. Maybe your lactation consultant isn't very knowledgeable because just because they work at a hospital doesn't mean they know, a lot of these natural techniques. And I've seen that happen a few times. So anyway, I was in a lot of pain. They came in, this nurse, kind of lactation consultant helped with my latch, but Elijah would not latch on the right side. Elijah was checked and adjusted at birth, but a week in, because we were first-time parents and we're parents before we were doctors, I was like, oh my gosh, we haven't checked him since everything.
Like, wow, I take a moment and I'm like, man, I am such a bad chiropractor. Like I can't even believe that it's been this long since I've checked my son after probably one of the most traumatic experiences we experience in life. Is coming out into this world. Like, what the heck is going on? And I haven't even checked my son in weeks.
I mean, I don't know if he even slept that week. So listen, we gotta be graceful with ourselves. Right. And so just so you know, Elijah was born with a nuchal cord, which is normal in 30% of births, which means his umbilical cord was around his neck. And so I'll never forget, after just trying so long to get him to latch on the right side, you came in. Mm-hmm. And you want to let him know what you did?
Yeah, so, I checked him, and I specifically and very gently, adjusted him as well. And what was interesting, because I checked him and adjusted him right after birth, and his top bone in his neck, his atlas was out, right? And it was out on the right. And so gently, again, if you guys have never seen how a little baby is adjusted, it's very, very gentle. It's holding enough pressure to hold a dime against the skin. Again, very safe and just very easy, holding sustained pressure. Literally felt, his atlas kind of go back in there. But again, once I did that, I was like, okay, he's great. But what I didn't recognize is, again, you talked about the cord was wrapped around his head. And so it actually affected his C2, so the second bone in the neck. And so the second time I checked him, I was like, oh my goodness, look at this. C2 is out here. And so checked him, adjusted him, and guess what?
He nursed. And he never had an issue again. 2.5 years of nursing, and it was, it was just, again, we live this every single day, but allowing the body to balance itself, to heal itself. If a child is not nursing on one side, there could be many different reasons, but a lot of times there's an obstruction there. And so what ends up happening, if that child is not nursing to fully on one side, you're going to produce even less on that side. It's kind of this feedback. And so with Elijah, it was remarkable. It was amazing. He got to nurse. Now with Rosie's, this was how would you say, I don't want to say like life-threatening, like it was life-altering. Yeah. It was a big deal.
Yeah, it was to a point where the midwife was not ready to leave yet until her respirations came down, right? Because they were so high. And really that happened because we had an amazing midwife, right? Yeah. Shout out to Carolyn Drake. She was amazing. And she actually gave you certain, exercises to do because she saw that, and you can probably explain it much better, but she saw that things were kind of going, the way that they went with Elijah, where she pushed for so long. And so she had her do a few exercises. And it was 2 pushes?
Yeah.
2 pushes, and Rosie came out so fast that her lungs didn't compress.
Yeah, up until that time, I was in my birthing time for 2 days. But I was comfortable. I was not in pain. I was just like, this is so stinking annoying. So finally, we kind of hit the stuck point. She had me do some lunges. And it was as soon as I went back into the pool, Rosie went from not being literally wasn't engaged to completely out. So it was so quick. First of all, I thought I was pooping. And second of all, I was like, this baby shouldn't be here. That was way too quick. But she came out so quickly.
Because she literally said that.
We're going to do a whole video.
She's like, what is that? We're like, that's your baby. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, yeah, no, it really is.
So with Rosie, she had really fast respiration. Her lungs hadn't compressed. She hadn't gotten all the fluid out. And she was breathing so quickly, just so quickly. And they started giving her some oxygen. And we were just like, we didn't know what to do. We were just kind of in shock. But this time we were like, we need to check her. That was too fast. It was too quickly. And I'm so thankful we had a birth photographer, because you jumped in, and the midwives kind of laid her down. And this is within a few minutes, 15 minutes. And he went in, same thing, checked her, and just relieved. And it was I'm staring at her chest, oh my gosh, what's going on? We need to figure this out. And her little chest was just
slow down. Yeah.
And then just in that moment, the photographer took a picture, and she smiled.
Cool.
We have a picture of Rosie just showing the smile on her face, and then the midwife was just they all were just looking oh my gosh, it was so amazing, and so we kind of let her just get on some more oxygen, and then he checked her again, and you adjusted her again, and same thing, and then after that she was put on my chest, and it was just I wish that every single person can have and experience chiropractic care during pregnancy, with their birth, postpartum, I wish everyone could experience it, because there's so much more to chiropractic than pain. And for me to see my daughter struggling because there is this subluxation, because there was this interference with her body, and she was perfect. She was wonderfully made. She was perfect. And even born at home with a midwife, with no medication, I did all this training. It's still it's still a hard process on kids. And to see her, and we'll have to post that picture on our page, but just to see her body do what it was meant to do, and without any interference, was just so powerful for us.
And I think it's a good point that she talked about, like, is chiropractic natural? No, it's not. But guess what? We don't live in a natural world anymore.
Fibroids aren't natural either.
Fibroids are, but juicing is not natural. Taking massive amounts of supplements aren't natural. But guess what? Those are much needed, right? Especially in the world that we live in today, and we thank God that we have those tools to be able to utilize. And so why are we talking about something like chiropractic care, and we're talking about kids' health? Because to me, it's literally at the top of the list of the thing that you can do. So wherever you guys are at around the United States or around the world, again, go and see a chiropractor in your area, somebody who specializes, even in pediatrics. There's ICPA chiropractors, we're a member of that association. And again, it's literally knowing that every single time they lay on the table and they're getting that gentle, specific adjustment, it is allowing their bodies to adapt better, right, to the stress around them, physical, mental, and emotional. And so for so long, people ask, well, what about the science behind chiropractic? And now it's unbelievably clear on how it affects the nervous system. And a couple ways that it does that, it actually triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and your digest. That is when your immune system works the best. That is when your digestive system works the best, which is why I can't even tell you how many babies have pooped on my table, that have had constipation for, literally weeks. But again, it's allowing their nervous system to balance. It's allowing them to actually be able to adapt better to the stresses around them. And I'm telling you, man, there's the immune system that you see in those kids are phenomenal. And again, guys, if you've never seen that, you never experienced it, it's very specific and very gentle, and it's an amazing process.
You did it within Rosie being born within a few minutes or 15 minutes. And so, with Rosie's fast respiration, I always think, like, how many times did a child's nervous system just need to balance? How many times did their bodies just need to balance from the craziness that happened? I mean, Rosie was born into a dark room, a calming room. There was only, the midwife there. Everyone was calm, and there was nothing. I mean, I was feeling good. Like, everything was in this perfect, environment, and yet she was still having difficulties breathing. And if she hadn't been checked, if she hadn't been adjusted, I mean, who knows how long it would have taken for her breathing to have normalized. And, that's why midwives are amazing at what they do. They don't wait for red flags. They're looking for yellow flags. And I know that if she would not have normalized, they wouldn't have had any issue with saying you need to take her to go get seen. Yeah. And Rosie has had no breathing issues since. Like, none. She's so stinking loud. She's always yelling. She never loses her breath and always rushing. But chiropractic is just, we love what it's taught us about how to, come across to health. Because even the one thing I'll say that functional medical doctors do not have is the principle. A lot of even functional medical doctors still function off of, we got to treat these symptoms with medications, and chiropractors
or even with supplements.
Or even with supplements, got to treat supplements like they are pills for your symptoms. And chiropractors give us this premise that, we know how to preach it really well, but it's been around even before chiropractic, that the body's created to hear this unbelievable, powerful intelligence within your body that is put there from day one, and it knows how to heal, and it just needs no interference to do that. And so when we think about our kids' health, we remove all interferences through the nutrition, through their nervous system.
Exactly, and that's what I was about to say. I think the principle of health, since it's been around since the beginning of time, is to allow the body to function as well as it possibly can. And really, I also like the way it's described as well. Sometimes health, in its simple terms, is being able to repair more than you're damaged, right, on a daily basis. And so the more we're able to do that, and so what are some tools that we use to do that? Again, yes, working on their nervous system, but also removing toxicity, right? Not only in our lifestyle, but in our body, in our kids' bodies, and doing that appropriately. Supporting deficiencies, right, and making sure there's no nutritional deficiencies. Making sure our kids are eating. They basically eat a paleo style nutrition, which is basically whole foods, right? It's eating good quality meat, lots of fruits and vegetables, and then doing nuts and seeds, and that's really and lots of good healthy fat, and that's their diet to support their bodies overall. And if you haven't seen it yet, I think didn't you do a post on Rosie the other day? Like,
no, I haven't. I gotta do it.
Oh man, we didn't even try. But guess what? She wanted to test because she saw mommy testing her ketones, and she was at like 1.6. She was well into nutritional ketosis. That's without trying. Why? Because kids, they literally are moving. They're constantly, using up all the glucose if they're not over consuming glucose, and then they naturally fast for a while they sleep. So all that to be said, guys, again, this is all information that's saying how can we take our kids and how can we bring them as close to not only the natural as we possibly can, but how do we get their bodies to function as natural as it possibly can? And guess what? In an artificial environment today, we need some help, and that's why we go through these things like chiropractic care, like specific nutrition, and going above and beyond with that. And then as far as like supplementation as well, yes, you better believe on a regular basis our kids, they take supplements because I recognize and I know the deficiencies that are out there. Even in our organic, locally raised food, there are still deficiencies, from our soil.
Absolutely. And so thank you guys for tuning in. I guess we should get home to our kids who are still here at the office. But if you guys have any questions for us, make sure to comment on this video, any suggestion, any tips for other moms and dads trying to do healthy things for their kids. And we'll make sure to post those pictures that we talked about. Thank you guys, and make sure you share.
Awesome.